And hello again.
Hey,
As
it's been
you
so
probably
long.
as you probably noticed, we're trying to record all the series in one go. Although we said goodbye to you in our last series, we are back again, literally a few minutes later, to record the next part. So
Yeah,
please do forgive us. We're still wearing the same clothes because we're still on the same day. But we say hello to each other once again.
yep. Good to see you
Um,
again.
so we've just talked about vetting. And for those who will be listening, it will be probably like last week, a video that they watched. And we talked about vetting last week. And now we would like to move on into code of conduct. Very interesting
Yep.
and very, very sometimes painful subject for interpreters and job providers. But I'd like to start with a question that could probably try to give me a little bridge. You might not see that from the previous subject to the one that I would like to for us to enter. So will you be recommending that interpreters who will be providing services for police are on National Register of Public Service Interpreters?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Not sure where that fits in with code of conduct, but I don't see the bridge, but I'm quite happy to talk about it. The register is voluntary.
Sorry, Mark, can I just explain to you where the bridge is so that perhaps it helps? The
Go
bridge
on.
is that National Register is the regulatory body. So that's where code of conduct comes on the scene.
Right.
This is where
Yeah.
you need to follow the code of conduct. So that would help, I think.
Okay.
If all the interpreters are regulated, then they are accountable when they provide their services for police.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Not only do interpreters on the register have to comply with that code of conduct, if they're in the CIOL, they have to comply with that code of conduct. And then, of course, apart from in the southwest of England, everywhere else in the country, if you want to take police bookings, you have to work through an agency, and therefore you signed up to the agency's code of conduct as well. And I've looked at everyone's. I've looked at the agency's codes of conduct. NERPC have shown me theirs. CIOL has shown me theirs. You have one for being a member of the AIT? No? You just
No,
use NERPC's?
we accept a National Register code of
Yeah.
conduct.
Okay, that's great. So all of these codes of conduct are very, very similar. They all talk about you taking breaks. They talk about you having confidentiality, and they are very much similar, I believe. But we're talking about NERPC. So NERPC is not a mandatory requirement of being able to do police work. There are a large number of excellent interpreters who've chosen not to be members of NERPC. They've chosen not to be registrants for whatever reason, and I don't know the reason, and if I did, I probably wouldn't say anyway. But there are a large number of interpreters out there that are doing excellent work in police that have chosen not to be part of that register for all sorts of reasons, but they're still subject to codes of conduct. It's not for the police to mandate something that cannot be mandated. We can't say to do police work, you must be a member of NERPC, because it's not something that's in law, therefore we can't do it. Now, I've seen a post recently from Avon and Somerset Police saying to do police work, you have to be on the register. Well, I've asked them to clarify that, because to do police work in Avon and Somerset, you may need to be on the register, but to do police work anywhere else in the country, you don't have to be on the register. So your question was, am I going to ensure that everyone's on the register? The answer is no, I can't do it. The police service cannot mandate something that isn't mandatable. I've spoken with Mike on this, Mike Orloff from NERPC, on many occasions. We meet regularly, we sit in East London, in Canary Wharf, having coffee until lockdown, unfortunately put a stop to it, but we had a phone call last week again. So we've debated this. Government have no appetite to regulate interpreters. They want self-regulation. The government don't see it appropriate for them to mandate it. That's not going to change, not while there's a Conservative government. Labour may see it differently. So I'll say again, it's not in the police interest to mandate something that isn't mandatory. I know the benefits that you get from being in NERPC, in that if you step out of line, then there's independent review of your conduct. And Mike has made this clear. He uses judges, he uses magistrates, he uses all sorts of people to independently review the behaviour or the conduct of that particular registrant. But then the other bit that says that NERPC are the only people that that check your documentation, etc., isn't quite true. If you go to work for Capita, Cintra, or the big word, there are people working there who are trained to look at your documentation to ensure that you do have the right qualification, the right vetting, and the right experience. So that piece of information isn't quite true, that it's only NERPC that provide that. They are independent, and I accept that they're independent, but actually we're working with the agencies to ensure that they're independent as well. The people in the linguist recruitment department that are looking at all these documents are checking that you, the interpreters, have got the qualifications, vetting and experience to do that work. So we're okay with that. You know that I've been doing auditing and checking that the interpreters sent to locations for police have got what they're required. But I want to talk about regulation. Around the country, police chiefs have debated how the police can regulate interpreters to ensure that we only get the correct vetted and qualified interpreters. We've listened over the last 2.5 years, we've listened to the concerns that NERPC have had, the APCI, PI4J, all these organisations have been in consultation with the police, setting out their concerns around regulation. And the police have reacted to this. So you're hearing it first here, I think, although I don't know when this is going out. But the police are going to be setting up our own list. Now, when I spoke to Mike about this, he said, what you're doing is reinventing the register. I'm not reinventing the register, but what we're doing is setting up our own authorised list of interpreters and translators. And as I keep saying, Leicestershire have the national lead, so Leicestershire will take the lead on this. But every chief constable in the country has agreed that this is the right way to go. We're not going to make it difficult for the interpreters. All those that are already registered with an agency that have the qualifications, the vetting and the experience will automatically be added to that list. We understand the issues with independent review of conduct, but how often does that happen? The majority of the interpreters that are listening to this now, the thousands of interpreters out there that do police work, that way exceeds the 1,700 that are on the register, the national register, are all doing a fantastic job. How often do they need to be disciplined? They might be spoken to because they've turned up late. That might be because the police have given them the wrong location. It happens. It might be because their bus was cancelled or delayed because of a car crash on the road. That happens. It's very rare that we have to deal with serious discipline for interpreters. And if we do, Irina, if we do, we will be looking to organisations like yourself, experts in interpreting and police interpreting, will be looking at setting up independent boards to oversee any serious discipline. And it may be that some of that discipline is actually criminal, in which case the police are the best people to investigate it anyway. So you're hearing it first here. NERPC won't be the only register. We will hold a register just for police. And don't forget, the NERPC register is for all forms of public sector interpreting, public service interpreting. We're setting up a list that approves just police interpreters. We're working with NERPC for it. And those forces that still use NERPC will continue to do so. The Met Police at the moment will only take interpreters to work in London who are on the NERPSI register. But the Met Police are signing up to our police-approved interpreters and translators as well. So we'll be sharing that information with them as well as to the interpreters that are authorised around the country.
Mike, I'd like to reiterate a few points. You've given quite a lot of information, and I just wanted to kind of perhaps slow down a little bit and then just look at a few things that you already pointed out.
Yeah.
You said that you mentioned that there are obviously different codes of conduct. You know, there's a code of conduct by NIPSI, COL, and you know, other professional association, APCI, ITI, and also agencies, and also police as organization. All of this organizations and bodies have their own code of conduct. So do you not feel that perhaps there are far too many code of conducts, that should it not be one unified one? And also the other point I wanted to perhaps point out or talk a little bit more about the public safety. You know, when we're talking about regulatory bodies, when you look at other professions, you know, say doctors, nurses, lawyers, you know, they've got regulatory bodies. They're not there because there are not many complaints. They're there in case if there are. They're there to regulate. So to say, well, interpreters are wonderful and all fantastic, so we don't need to discipline them, let's not have code of conduct, let's not have regulatory bodies, I don't think that's a correct approach, you know, for many reasons. You know, obviously continuity of police work, also for public safety, and not to forget, as the main thing, is the human rights, basic human rights to a fair trial. So we need to be ensured that interpreting is to a higher level. So not to have them, you know, practitioners regulated. My view, and you know, I might be criticized, but my personal view is that not a safe approach. So that's another thing I wanted to perhaps you know.
Okay, you put a lot in there, but let's deal with that last bit first. Public safety. You mentioned doctors. I've always mentioned driving instructors and airline pilots. They're all regulated by law, because the government have decided that it's most important in law that those people are regulated. The regulatory bodies will never go on LinkedIn and say our pilots don't get paid enough. Okay, and Mike and I have had this discussion that in the past, your regulatory body that says it's independent hasn't been independent. It's been fighting for the rights of interpreters, which is your role as an organisation. Now, Mike and I have agreed on this, and I hope Mike, when watching this, will believe that I've been fair. Mike has stopped doing that. Mike has stopped commenting on police getting low quality interpreters because the interpreters aren't on NERPSI. And I'm grateful for that, and I've always thanked him since he's done that. And the only reason he's done that...
If regulatory body is truly independent and impartial, then you think differently perhaps on that?
I'd think differently, and I do already think differently, because Mike has stopped putting those posts out there saying that the public are getting a raw deal because the interpreters aren't on NERPSI. So I've already changed my view on that. But the bottom line is, the government has said there's enough regulation out there, and therefore it doesn't need to be mandated. Now, you may not like it, but interpreters are being disciplined by agencies if they step out of line. It's just potentially, in the past, not been independent, because the agency will use their own staff for any discipline. And secondly, there is a commercial aspect to it, that the interpreter is needed to work for that agency, because the agency has a contract with the police service to provide interpreters, which is why the police are looking to oversee the discipline. Doesn't mean we'll deal with it. Agencies will still deal with minor discipline. You talked about human rights to a fair trial. That's a criminal matter, and therefore the police would deal with that. So if someone is arrested for breach of information or something like that, then it's a police matter and the police will deal with it.
No,
If
no.
it's a right to a fair trial for a civil matter, then it's not a trial to discipline someone. That's
No,
not
no,
a trial.
what I meant is that the skills, the standards of interpreters should be high in order to somebody who's in court, the defendant's human rights to fair trial. So they need to be,
I'm with you.
they need to be sure that
Yeah,
interpreters provided to them of a higher standard.
yeah. But the highest standard isn't checked by NERPC. NERPC don't train interpreters. NERPC check the documents, which are also checked by agencies who have the same experience. Now, there may be ex-interpreters working for NERPC. There are most certainly ex-interpreters and translators working in every one of the agencies. They take people who have experience in translating and interpreting and employ them in agencies. So those people have the skills to assess whether the person is, the interpreter is suitable for work. When I talk and did my audits with the agencies, they gave me examples of where they have used qualified professionals to test the skills of the interpreters and translators before they employ them. And employ is the wrong word, but before they send them out on assignments, when they onboard them. That is quality. That's checking that an interpreter is qualified and able to do the job. NERPC don't do that. And there are a number of people on the NERPC register who are interim members that if a police officer gets on that register looking for an interpreter, has no idea about the level of skill and quality of interpreting they're going to get. The agencies are already regulating that for us and the police will oversee it.
Thank you. We're going to have to come back
Okay.
again on this subject. We'll stay on this subject, so stay with us. We're going to have a little break and we'll come back on this subject again.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.